Hello, and thanks for joining us. As always, with us is Dr. Michael Laitman. Hello. And today we're going to talk about Jerusalem, that is the heart. It's a spiritual Jerusalem in the heart. It's a spiritual state, and if someone wants to find out about the city of Jerusalem, that's not far from our studio, about 50 kilometers. There's lots of information about it on the internet. But the city is in the heart of every person. What is this spiritual state called Jerusalem? This is what I'd like to talk to you about today. Actually, this is a very important city. On the one hand, we're going to talk about what happened both in our world and history, because there is such a city, it existed, it's mentioned in the Tanakh a few hundreds of times, six or 800 times. It only shows the significance of the city, but on the other hand, we know that in the Tanakh, the people who attained the upper force, they wrote the Tanakh as an instruction in order to pass on to those people who want to reveal the condition or state called Jerusalem within themselves. So we'll run this kind of parallel, interstate versus historical. So first of all, if you can say, please, the name itself, Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, where does it come from? The name itself consists of two words, Yirah Shlema, meaning it is a state of awe, complete awe, before the quality of the bestowal of the Creator. It is called Jerusalem. When a person achieves such a state where he is entirely in awe, but in a good kind of awe, not that he's afraid, that he's trembling, because he's in fear of getting some kind of punishment or something, but awe in terms of, can I really do the same for the Creator that He does for me? Meaning all that higher good, upper good, and abundance that He brings upon me. Now, we're not talking about simple people in our world who is in concealment, but we're talking about a person who reveals the whole of creation and sees that the Creator does everything only to his benefit, wholeness, perfection, eternity. And when along with that, in him, the proper attitude toward the Creator becomes revealed, then that state is called the state of Yirah Shlema, complete awe, meaning Jerusalem. Complete awe, complete aspiration, yearning. This is what Jerusalem means. So, it consists of these two words, Yirah, awe, and Shalem, whole, complete. But your teacher also says that it is Ir Shlema, complete city. What is a city? City is an inner state in a person where everything that a person does accumulates in this one single construction, which is as if his home, his inner state. And this is what he wants to associate with the Creator. So all of his desires, when they're directed in one direction, or if we're saying that we can say that it's inside one person or inside all of humanity, where above all the contradictions and separation that exist, there's some kind of a higher force, higher value, which is one for all. Yes, that's why it's called the heart of the world, the capital of the world, etc. So exactly about that, Jerusalem has many names. It's the capital of the world, heart of the world, and that's why we called the show Jerusalem, heart of the world. And it's also called the city of David. There was a king, David, 3,000 years ago, and he discovered in himself, revealed such a state in him, and therefore that's why he called the city the way he did. Well, yeah, but no, he didn't name the city after himself. It was clear to him that the city, even though that He was the one who made it the capital of his government. But still, by the way, Jerusalem existed before that too. Yeah, some say that it's been around for 7,000 years from early stages of the Bronze Era. That altogether, in accordance with all our source texts and that which is being passed on from generation to generation, we didn't build anything new here according to all of that. We simply took from what already existed on this planet and simply took it to the next level. This is actually what Israel takes pride in that they take the still level and elevate it to the spiritual degree. Yeah, about 3,000 years ago, when the Israelites settled down here, before them there were the Canaanim here. Now it's interesting that when King David came to power, he ruled in Hebron for 7 years, and Hebron in Hebrew comes from the word chibur, connection, and then moved to Jerusalem. So I'm trying to understand, he attained complete awe and understood that now he needs to arrange the city of Jerusalem, call it Jerusalem. No, also to move there and arrange it and build the temple, etc., etc. Yeah. These are all things that he found out as a result of his inner attainment. What's the difference between Hebron and Jerusalem? Spiritually wise. Spiritually wise, Jerusalem aspires upwards, and Hebron, from the same point, aspires downwards. Hebron is related to the desire, the malchut, etc., and therefore we have the graves of our forefathers there, Adam and his wife, Abraham and his wife, Jacob. Yeah, all of our forefathers are buried there in the cave of Machpelah. So what I understand is that if we're talking about spiritual states, then a person begins his spiritual path with some kind of harmony. As it says, before the Tower of Babel, everyone was like one nation. Meaning, like animals. Animals are in a whole and complete state in our world. And then suddenly the desire starts growing and begins the state of Babylon, where everything's confused, there's no harmony. And afterwards, there's Canaan. Also, it's interesting where this word comes from. It's from the word achna'ah, to submit yourself, to submit, concede your ego. So, first of all, a person discovers this inside himself, and then we see historically that he moves to some place. Yeah. So it says that any root needs to gradually grow in a person and attain its spiritual state. That's interesting. What is this law that at least once a root has to be materialized in the corporeal world? Because all of our structure, earthly, of the universe, it all needs to express itself in a spiritual state, in parallel, and therefore that's how it happens. That there was some kind of a physical conquering, then there was a physical correction, and now we're only left with adding our inner corrections to it, our psychological, spiritual ones. So, it's, everything is encoded, written in a way. Yeah, that's how they wrote it. That the spiritual degrees of the development of the human soul was written in these kinds of symbols, etc., etc. So when I submit my ego, I enter the land of Canaan. When I rise above it already and start working in bestowal, then this land, which is desire, is then called Israel. Okay, that's clear. And also, when we talk about Jerusalem, about the building of the temple, the first temple, 1950 BC by King David, 550. And what is the spiritual building of the temple and the shattering of the temple? It is a symbol of the corrected kli of man's soul that completely aspires for the Creator and is in full contact with Him, in complete connection. What's the difference between Jerusalem and the temple? Is it a more subtle quality? Obviously. The temple is a more materialized aspiration for the Creator because it is in a city, on a mountain. It symbolizes the place of contact of the physical with the spiritual. Once I heard you say that the building of the temple symbolizes that, well, the first temple, it symbolizes the unification of the 12 clans, the so-called Mochin of Chaya. What is that state? Well, it's hard to say what kind of state is that. I need to somehow explain it to our listeners. I don't know how to do it. We try and reach the state. So, it's a certain degree of the sensation of the Creator and the quality of bestowal in a person that he constantly develops in himself. So, more simply put, we can say that the first temple was the manifestation of the 12 tribes, then it's all destroyed, this entire structure, and the second temple is the unification of merely 2 tribes. And the third temple, once I heard you say that it's the unification of all of humanity. Yeah, so it says.
Если это внутри человека, то это что это означает?
If it's inside a person, what does it mean? That all of man's qualities aspire to work in bestowal. They're directed at working toward bestowal. Baal Sulam writes that the nation of Israel, it was, they were all established on the principle of love another as yourself. This is what they received when they climbed Mount Sinai, Sinah from the word hate, when they rose above the hate, and there was one condition, which was mutual responsibility. They couldn't keep it because of the ego, and what happened was that they had to, meaning they could no longer keep it in their heart, and in the external corporeal world, they needed to then build a symbol, which was the temple made of stone and with the altar and to bring sacrifices. So it turns out that previously man brought his ego as a sacrifice, and then in the external world it's expressed where you already take animals, put them on the altar, bring them as an offering. It's as if the egoistic different qualities of a person are taken and brought as sacrifice for the elevation of the soul. But this is an external expression of an inner correction inside a person, where he is willing to give everything that exists in him in order to turn his qualities of reception into qualities of bestowal. To replace his egoistic motions to egoistic aspirations. So if we're talking about nature as the upper force, as the creator that rules and governs everything, how do we relate that where, suddenly you have stones, you have some poor animal that's killed, someone says something, gives some kind of blessing. How's that related to the correction of the soul? That's very hard to understand. Were we to find ourselves in the altar, in the temple, ancient temple in Jerusalem, it's like a slaughterhouse. Butcher, they sacrifice, they butcher cows, sheep, goats, bake breads, pour wine and water on stone tables on which these animals are slaughtered, chopped up into pieces. It's a kind of unclear kind of work. It's like a slaughterhouse. Yeah, as if the Creator needs all of this. What kind of Creator needs all of these poor animals to be killed this way? But really, this is all inner work. But that's how it is, that it needs to manifest on this level too, because this is the lowest degree of the ego in a person that is corrected this way. Meaning, in us, there is the animate level. We consist of two parts, the animate and the human. So, the human level, we correct it by changing ourselves from reception to bestowal, from all the bad egoistic qualities to a positive altruistic quality. And when we do it, we need at the same time to understand that we're in this world, just like, and in our world, when we take the animal in us, then this is manifested as any kosher animal. We need to kill it inside ourselves, meaning to put this animate beginning in ourselves, and in a certain way then, to burn it, eat it. Meaning, we need to elevate it to the level where it serves the human degree in us that is already connected with the Creator. But this is a kind of allegory, allegorical correction of our qualities and their raising to the spiritual degree. So obviously, a person does all of these things inside himself, kills the animate level in him. Not that he kills them, he elevates them. Then he eats them, meaning that he already correctly uses them. But in our world, because there are laws, as we've said before, of root and branch, then here too, this is how it was supposed to be revealed. Yeah. And what does it mean that it's now broken, ruined? We're not on such a level yet. We're not yet on such a level where we can correct ourselves this way, and therefore the temple was destroyed, not because someone attacked it and destroyed it, but because it itself came to such a state because of the people who were supposed to implement such qualities in themselves, and therefore the egoistic temple was destroyed. And now we can do just one thing, which is to elevate ourselves to such a degree that it will as if be reborn, but already to be reborn in a spiritual and not a corporeal state. So you don't see that in the third temple. No, there won't be a third temple made of stone. It will only be in the form of our inner qualities. So it's going to be in the hearts of all of humanity. Yeah, and united humanity. By the way, back then too, there was, everyone had the opportunity to come to the temple, any person, not only from Israel, and to go into the temple and take part and sacrifice and bring sacrifices. Josephus Flavius writes about it, that there was a place for the nations of the world, for women, for the Levites, for the Cohens, meaning different types of desires. Each had their own place in the temple. Each brought their sacrifice. The temple was a spiritual construction of the entire world. So first of all, the Jerusalem in the heart is destroyed, and as a result, Jerusalem is destroyed, and the temple and everything else. So just to understand, what does it mean that I bring into my animate desire a sacrifice? Egoism. What kind? What kind of egoism? On the animate level, meaning that you think only of yourself. So I can imagine that I'm thinking only about myself in relation to something. Here this is what you need to sacrifice, slaughter, and burn it, and raise it to the level where you can eat it, meaning to turn it into energy so that your spiritual state will rise even more. Meaning to eat means to use it correctly, just like today. I eat food and it gives me energy to my animate body. The same way, to my spiritual body, when I kill this animal in me, I use it correctly, it also gives me energy, meaning it all corresponds. Okay, when we enter Jerusalem, there's the Mount of Olives, and it's interesting that in 586, when Jerusalem was destroyed, the Babylonians took over it, exiled the Jews into the Babylonian exile, and it's called the Mount of Olives. Hal-Azeitim, mountain, Azeitim, olives, and King David also sang his prayers there. And what's interesting is that from there, on a white horse, the Messiah will come. Can you explain what is a white donkey, a Messiah? A donkey in Hebrew is chamol. Chamol comes from the word chomel, substance, matter, meaning all the egoistic matter of our world is manifested in a donkey. Why white? White because it's corrected, it's whitened, it's free of the ego. But at first, it's completely black. So the black donkey became a white donkey, and that's how we corrected it, meaning the entire ego of our world is in a state where it's possible to work in bestowal to the benefit of everyone. There's also Mount Kidron, there is Emek Yoshafat there, the Yoshafat Valley, where it's the place where after the war of Gog and Magog, Armageddon, all of humanity will be there. There will be a kind of trial there. Who's going to be trialed for what? The thing is that when people will understand what is the meaning of the existence of the world, history, correction, everything that goes on with them, went on with them, they themselves will judge themselves. They will judge themselves, and this way, all motion will be in the direction of praising the Creator. According to the prophecy, it says that precisely in that place, out of dust, the bodies will resurrect. It means that all those desires, not bodies of course, but all the egoistic desires that all those egoistic desires that exist, they will all be revealed once again in all people, in all of humanity, in all that generation that will be. But it'll already be revealed in such a way that we will be able to work with them in bestowal on the connection between us and mutual love. This is the resurrection of the dead desires. Dead meaning egoistic, that it was impossible to no longer use in any way, and now we will be able to use them for the sake of love and bestowal. It's interesting how Midrash Tanchuma says that the land of Israel is in the center of the world, and Jerusalem is in the center of the land of Israel, and the temple is the center of Jerusalem, and the menorah is in the center of the temple, and there is the stone before the menorah that enlightens the world. Well, what are these qualities? It's called Even Ashtiyah. This is the quality of the world. The initial egoism, terrible, it's completely impossible to correct it, invert it to love and bestowal in no way. And this ego gradually becomes very evident. And you're talking about this Even Ashtiyah. Even Ashtiyah, it's like the founding stone. Yeah, it's the foundation of the entire world. Like initial matter. Yeah, it's the ego out of which all matter was created. And everything's built on it. Actually, all these qualities that we talk about, the land of Israel, Jerusalem, the temple, the menorah, the Even Ashtiyah, these are actually in their root. According to their root, these are the most egoistic qualities. But when you correct them, then you start raising them from dust. You start stabilizing them, and they become holy, meaning the entire egoism, all the bad things about them, invert into good. And this way, what's created is this entire structure, inverted structure. It's as if turned inside out. From a state of complete egoism to a state of complete altruism. Well, we only have a few minutes left, but still, if we're talking about Jerusalem, we need to mention the wall that surrounds the city and the gates. What, spiritually wise, what is the wall? What are the gates? 8 gates, I think. The thing is that the wall is that which surrounds a city and all the ancient cities in Israel, and there were several such that were surrounded by a wall. It was necessary in order to symbolize that inside the city there is a special quality of bestowal, love, connection, mutuality, etc. And therefore, the wall symbolizes the connection between all the egoistic desires that take it upon themselves to be connected altruistically, spiritually between themselves. Therefore, the wall is necessary. Without that, there is no city. Can we say that it is the limitation of the ego? Yeah, that inside the city there is no ego. It's impossible, otherwise it's not a city. And the gates, they're opened and closed according to the measure to which it is, to the measure to which you can't hold something inside yourself to let it out of the boundaries of the city. Well, this is something that we can depict as a screen, meaning that if it is for the sake of bestowal, then it's possible to let the light of pleasure from the Creator into your desires, and if not, then the gates are closed. So I remember that there was like this symbol that there are those that are completely shut, symbolically. So it says that in the future they'll be opened. Yeah, the gates of the Messiah. And last but not least, Jerusalem in the future. It says that in different source texts that in the future Jerusalem will become a lighthouse to the nations of the world, and all nations will aspire for it and come to its light. What is that? It means that the idea of the nearing between people, between nations, initially exists in creation, in its structure, but it will all be revealed only after the correction of all of its parts, where all shall aspire for connection and see that specifically this is the center, the symbol of the creation of the entire world, and then really we will find out what really is this city of Jerusalem. To build Jerusalem, what does that mean? I saw this show, how should a person start building Jerusalem now? Inside himself. Right. Inside ourselves, we need to create inside ourselves such a quality, that such a motion toward our connection that there will be no difference between people, that we will be able to feel each other this kind of motion where we will turn into one whole, then this one quality that will unite all our particular qualities and hearts and everything, it will be called Jerusalem. What's the first step toward it? Annulling your ego. Thank you very much. This was our show, Spiritual States, Jerusalem in the Heart. All the best.